friends, here we are again on our way to somewhere where we have no idea where we're going. And as has become a trend lately, I want to tell a follow-up story on the last video. In the last installment of whatever this is that we're doing right now, I complained about the bratty-ass neighbor kid where I used to live.
Yeah.
Well, by pure coincidence, at my job, I don't remember if it was yesterday or the day before. I want to say it was yesterday. Sure as hell wasn't today. It was yesterday. I was, checking some people out. And this one guy, with who I assume was his wife, might have been his mother. It was hard to tell. I don't know. Because they both look kind of older. But anyway. And he's kind of looking at me funny. And of course, I don't know who this guy is.
No.
But at that point, I didn't know who it was. He looks at me and he says, "Hey, I remember you. You're the one that used to come up there and hang out with my boys." And I won't, he said what their names were. I won't say what they were. It was that kid's dad. That same bratty kid that I was complaining about last time that kept stealing my bike. By pure chance, I happened to cross that kid's dad yesterday, and I probably haven't seen any of them in about 10 years.
Wow.
At the least. So yeah, and somehow this guy recognized me. And mind you, 10, 15 years ago, I was a lot skinnier and had more hair.
Yeah.
And was a lot less clinically depressed. But yeah, I just seem to have a thing for talking about shit, and then something happens that I talked about.
Yeah.
Because first it was, Jeremiah, now it was that guy. But anyway, that was a little short story. Well, we're officially in some place called Coaldale. I don't know where that is or if there's anything of interest here, but we're here. This is where we wound up. Getting back into the true spirit of Random Night.
Yeah.
I mean, the last few episodes, I'll admit, we kind of been cheating and going to mostly places we've been before and just kind of babbling, but this time we are legit in a random place. That's what this is all about, really. That's the true spirit of Random Night. Now we're coming up on somewhere else. We are now in Broadtop Township. Which brings me to something else I want to complain about. Where we live, where I live more specifically, it's kind of a small town, and going right down the center of town is an old set of railroad tracks that haven't been used in, I would say, decades.
Yeah.
And they used to belong to what was called the East Broadtop Railroad. Well, I think Conrail, nowadays known as Norfolk Southern, had a small hand in it too, but the narrow gauge rails were part of the East Broadtop. And they stretched the whole way from where I live in that town, and they go, about 10 miles south to Orbizonia. And there's the train station still there, and they still give people rides on the old steam trains and stuff, but it just goes and makes a circle and turns around and comes back. Well, recently they've been trying to restore the tracks in between. And a lot of people think that this is going to be a great idea, and I'm going to explain why it's not a great idea. Steam engines make a hell of a mess.
Yeah.
Because they burn coal. And when you burn coal, you get soot. And it comes out of the smokestack and gets all over every fucking thing.
Yep.
And I want to make a point that the house where I live now is a decent distance away from the current train tracks that are in service. Well, back in the day, you know, before you had your diesel trains, you had, of course, your steam engines. And my grandmother was telling me about this recently. Back in the early 50s, when her and my grandpa first bought that house, they had to vacuum out the entire attic to get rid of all the railroad soot. Mind you, I'm probably about a quarter to a half a mile away from the train tracks.
Yeah.
I can hear the trains go by at night, but they're far enough away that it's not a big deal. If the attic of my house was that full of railroad soot from that far away, imagine what all the businesses and houses along these old train tracks that are in the middle of town will look like if they're having steam engines go through town. You know, it's a tourist attraction nowadays. And they only run it a couple times a year. But just imagine what a hell of a mess that's going to make. Unless they come up with an alternate source, you know, to, you know, make these things go that doesn't make a hell of a mess, that's going to be a problem. Because keep in mind, if my house got that dirty being a half a mile away, there's a McDonald's no more than a few yards off of these railroad tracks. Now, I don't know about you people watching, but I certainly would not want to eat at a McDonald's that had a steam engine going by and all my food be covered in railroad soot.
Yeah.
Now, in all fairness to the people of the East Broad Top Railroad, they do have an electric trolley car that runs in the opposite direction. You know, they run it out to a dead end, and the seats flip, and then you come back the way you came. If they ran that, it wouldn't be so bad because it's electric. That I wouldn't mind seeing, because that would actually be kind of cool to see that back and forth.
Yeah.
But a steam engine, I have my worries. And like I said, they only run it a couple times a year. But over time, that soot builds up. And it's not exactly good for you either.
Yeah.
I mean, recently they removed a bunch of World War II era boxcars from these tracks. They had trees growing up through them and every shit. Because they're serious about getting these tracks back in service. I think it's kind of a bad idea, but I guess we'll see what happens. Because they're going to do it now and there's no stopping them. And while I'm on the subject of health hazards and railroads, I want to talk a little bit about the high school that we went to. Way back in the 50s, when the place was built, it was built smack dab in front of a creosote plant.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't know what creosote is, back in those days, they used it to treat railroad ties.
Yeah.
Anybody that has like a wood furnace and you burn wood, creosote can build up in your chimney, and it's
Know all about it.
it's very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't think they use it for anything anymore. I might be wrong on that. You know, I'm not a scientist or anything like that, but anyway, they built the school right in front of a creosote plant. And I've seen old pictures from way, you know, back in the day when the place was in service. And yeah, it was right the fuck there. Well, eventually, you know, it went out of business and shut down, and they removed it. I remember within my lifetime, they dug up all of the fields back behind the school, the baseball field where the running track is, all of that shit, because they were still, about 50 years later, finding traces of creosote in the soil.
Oh, yeah.
So they had to ship in all new dirt to replace it. And I remember one person who, in particular, who was pissed off because they dug up the baseball field. I'm not even sure if the man's still alive now. He might be dead, I don't remember. But his name was Mr. Imperoli, and he was the baseball coach for years. I think he was an English teacher or something like that. But he personally took care of the baseball field. He cut the grass, cleaned off all the bases, dusted the white line around the diamond and all that stuff, cleaned out the dugout and all that stuff, and kept shit painted up. He took care of everything. I mean, he would go out there with the lawnmower and make sure that shit was smooth. And he was very, very anal about it. And I remember hearing about it, how pissed off he was that they dug the whole thing up just to put new soil in. It's like, dude, seriously, you would rather put a bunch of, teenage kids at health risk just to keep your damn grass.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's just a little something I remember. And speaking of digging things up and destruction and potential hazards, it's time for another crazy neighbor story.
Oh my God.
And this one also pertains to where I live. Next door to my house, there used to be an almost identical house. And the people still own the property, and they're not very friendly, but we won't go into that.
No. All I'm going to say is they're fucking assholes.
Right, but anyway. At one point, they lived in the house, and then they moved out of state, and the house just sat there empty for as long as I could remember, and even before that. They never, ever came around and mowed their grass. I used to do it for them, and then I stopped, and I won't go into why, but I stopped.
Yeah.
But anyway, they never mowed their grass. They never came and took care of this house. They had like an old chicken coop in the backyard that is still there, but you can't see it through all the weeds and vines and shit that grow up around it. But anyway, there was an old outhouse in the yard, and another, like, an ugly looking tin shed. And of course, there was the house sitting there full of junk. Like, they mainly just used the place for storage. Like, there was nothing of any value in there. Like, there was old kitchen appliances from like the 70s still in there that weren't any damn good. Like, the place didn't even have a bathroom. And there was still an old-fashioned water pump on the back porch. Like, the kind that you pump up and down and it comes up out of the ground. Yeah, it had one of those on the back porch. And the water that came out of it was not safe to use. It stunk like fucking sewage. But anyway, this place was a breeding ground for snakes and rats and all sorts of shit. And they would come over in our basement and get all over the place. They'd be in our yard. We'd find snakes and rats and stuff all the time. And at the time, my grandmother was living there, and she got sick of this shit. So she offered to buy the property.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they wouldn't sell. They very flatly refused to sell. And this went on for years. She would try to talk them into selling, and they just wouldn't do it. Well, finally, she got some legal advice, and I don't know all the details because this was a long time ago now, but basically it was to the point where she was getting ready to sue these people. So finally, they gave in a little bit and agreed to tear the house down. Well, the person that got to do it left it half done. They got the roof tore off and had the upstairs floor exposed. And that's where they stopped. So basically there was a half a house that sat there for a couple months.
Yeah.
The guy doing it never came around, left all his tools there and every shit.
No shit.
Yeah. They were all sitting outside on a cart, rusting away.
Huh.
Never saw no sign of this guy ever again.
Maybe he died.
I don't know. He wasn't an older guy or anything. Yeah, it might have been in his 30s, maybe his 40s. But anywho. So, my neighbor, and y'all know the stories I've told about him in the past.
Yes.
I don't know how he got involved in this, but he got permission to burn it the rest of the way down. So he went and got... I want to make a point that he used to be part of the local fire company. I'm going to tell another story after this one that pertains to that. Getting back on track. So he went and got the fire truck and parked it out front and just set a match to the place and sat there on a lawn chair and watched it burn down. I was in school at the time, so I didn't get to watch, but by the time I got there, there was nothing left but a hole in the ground. But yeah, he sat there in our yard on a chair all damn day holding the hose just in case. He'd wet down to the side of our house, the roof and the siding and all that shit so it wouldn't catch or melt or anything because we have vinyl siding. And that's what he did all damn day. Just sat there and watched the house burn down. Actually, I left a little bit out of the middle. I should say that the guy got the second floor off and then started on the first floor but left a bunch of piles of boards with nails and shit sticking out of it. I should have said that, and then that's when my neighbor got involved. But anywho, later that night, you know, the place was still smoldering.
Yeah.
There was a couple flare-ups. And of course, me and my grandmother were a little bit worried that it might catch again. And mind you, it was late at night. So just to be on the safe side, we called him and said, could you come over and check on it? Since you're the fire company guy and you know more about this stuff than we do, just come over and see what you think. So he came over, I think it was like 2 o'clock in the morning.
No shit.
And got our hose out and just sprayed it down again. So yeah, that was an experience. Now, that wasn't really a crazy thing he did. That was just sort of a thing he did. Now I want to get to a stupid thing he did. And this is the very reason why he's no longer with the fire company. I don't know where he was going, what he was doing, or why. But he had the fire truck out. There's this very narrow one-way street leading out of the road. The main road that comes out of the area where we live.
Yeah.
Like, it's a 2-lane road both ways until you get to an intersection. Then it forks off in 3 different directions, and one of them is a one-way street if you continue to go on straight. There's a row of like these cookie cutter houses there. They're all the same, just different colors and shit. But anyway, and everybody along there parks on the street. This is an important bit of information. He was driving the fire truck down the main road and decided to take this street. Apparently, at some point between the fire station and there, the hose came unreeled. And he did not notice. Now, I understand that a fire truck is very large and you can't really see behind it that well when you're driving it. But how the fuck do you not notice that you're dragging a fucking 100-foot hose?
Yeah.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. He's going down this very, very narrow one-way street that, mind you, is full of potholes and you can barely get a regular-sized car through.
Yeah.
This is also an important thing. Anyway, he decides of all the places he could possibly go with this fire truck, for whatever reason he was driving it. I don't think he was responding to a fire or anything, so Lord only knows what the fuck he was doing. But anyway, there was a Jeep, like a Jeep Cherokee, parked on the corner. He snags it with the hose and drags it into the car parked in front of it, drags that car into the car parked in front of that. He totals 3 people's cars with this fire truck.
Holy shit.
Dragging the hose. Needless to say, they no longer let him drive the fire truck after that, and he eventually left the fire company. Yeah, that's a true story. Totaled 3 complete strangers' cars with a fire truck.
Damn.
He may have been going about 20 miles an hour, dragging a 100-foot hose, and totaled 3 cars.
Shit.
Mind you, a Jeep Cherokee is not a small car.
No.
You gotta have a good bit of power to drag one of those when it's parked. And to drag one with a fire hose ought to tell you something. Only this guy could have managed to pull this off. I cannot think of another human being that I've ever met or seen or heard of that could have ever done such a thing.
Leave it to him.
Right. And that story makes me think of another story that's not about him. But it is fire truck related.
Oh.
And it's car accident related. My other neighbor that lives in between me and my crazy neighbor had an old Ford truck. Probably like an early 90s Ford. Mind you, this is an elderly guy, you know. And I got another story about him, but I'll get to that one in a minute. Actually, I could tell you a couple stories about him, but I'm going to stick to this one for now. He was coming down the highway, getting ready to turn on the road that leads back into our neighborhood, and the fire truck was coming. So he stopped to let the fire truck come out of the road. Well, apparently, whoever else was on the road that day doesn't understand that same concept and tried to go out around him.
Oh.
And hit this guy's truck and crumpled the whole side of it in.
Oh.
Totaled this guy's fucking truck. Now, that's not a funny story, but it's about to be. This guy absolutely loves Ford. He's a Ford guy. A lot.
This is who I'm thinking it is?
That's exactly who you're thinking it is.
Mr. Mower. Mr. I got a mower.
You're ruining the next story.
Sorry.
Anyway. Well, fuck it. I'll just tell that story real quick. This guy mows his grass like every other day because he has nothing better to do.
Right.
He used to have like an old International Cub Cadet that he mowed with. Then he blew it up and got himself a big ass zero turn. And you see him out there about every other day. And he mows the grass in straight lines back and forth in a different direction every time. One day he'll go across, one day he'll go up and down, one day he'll go diagonal one way, one day he'll go diagonal the other direction. Oh, God. Okay, another side story. We're coming up on Tecumseh Street, and that's our least favorite type of lawnmower engine ever made.
Yeah.
Actually, that was part of the other story I was going to tell about this guy.
Well, go ahead.
Well, I'll get back to that one. I want to get back to the story about the truck. Anyway, like I was saying, he's a Ford guy.
Yeah.
So his insurance company provides him with a loaner truck. And it's a Chevy. And he hates it.
It's a real truck.
He hated it so much. Now, those of you out there, whether you're Ford people, Chevy people, Dodge people, I don't care. Everybody's got their preferences. Me personally, pretty much all three of us here, we all hate Fords with a passion.
Yeah.
That's just our personal opinion, and you can disagree with it if you so choose. But anyway.
Opinions are like assholes. Most everyone has one, and they stink.
Right. But anyway. Not only that, but the rollback truck that came to get his old truck was a Chevy. And believe me, I busted his balls for that one. And he's like, fuck you, go to hell. Well, finally, he did get himself another Ford. But anyway. Now I'm going to tell the other story that I was getting at. And well, since we mentioned Tecumseh Street. Or however the fuck you pronounce it, I don't even care. But anyway. I had an old Sears push mower that I got at some fucking yard sale or flea market, or I got it somewhere. Might have been an auction, I don't remember. It was a piece of shit. It was an old 4 horsepower Tecumseh. It was self-propelled when I got it, but not when I was done with it. But anyway. And I couldn't get it to start one day. So I took it over to this guy to see if maybe he knew anything about fixing them. I pushed it over to his driveway because he was outside fucking with something in the bed of his truck. And was outside fucking with something in the bed of his truck. And I said, you know anything about mowers? You think you can help me get this thing running? And of course, he was paying attention to what he was doing. And he just, with his big wad of red man in his mouth, he's like, what's wrong with it? And I'm like, well, it won't start. So he comes out from behind the truck and takes one look at it. He's like, it's Sears, they're damn good. And he wouldn't even do anything for me. He just didn't like Sears. So basically, that was a big fat fuck you. So I said, okay, well, whatever. And I pushed it back over to my shed. And looks like we came up on a dead-end street, and that's fucking awesome. But anyway, I pushed it back over to my shed, and I tore the top of the motor apart and discovered that the flywheel was rusty as hell, and the coil was rusty as hell. So I sanded it off, and put it back together. What the fuck do you know? It ran. So I started it up and pushed it back over to his driveway and said, they're no damn good, huh? So he just kind of looks at me like, whatever, fuck you. But yeah. And I ran that thing for a while, and then I think the belt broke for the self-propelled system. So I decided to do what any sensible person would do.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, our charger cables and shit are fucking up. But anyway. And I tore the self-propelled mechanism clear out of it. Ripped the axle out, I ripped the little gearbox out, everything. And I just put normal wheels on it. And I used it that way for a while. Well, then I got my hands on this other lawnmower from my other neighbor. And I might have talked about this before. In fact, yes, I did. This was the one that I eventually tore the motor off of and buried it in the dirt. But I stuck the engine off of that one that my neighbor said was no damn good on it and got it going again. And I told the rest of this story before, so it doesn't matter. But anyway, yeah. And I used it for a while until one day it just kind of blew up. And then I put the engine on it that friend of mine destroyed for me when she hit that pipe with it. But I told that story before, so I don't need to go into that again. But yeah. So there's a story about one of my other neighbors, who's a bit of an interesting character to say the least.
Yeah.
So yeah. I have no idea where the hell we are right now.
We're outside of Everett.
We're outside of Everett. Well, damn. Alright. Well, when I can think of something else to talk about, we'll be back. Okay, so we've been doing Random Night for years now, and only recently have we started recording it. We just set a fucking record for the most out of our way we've ever gone on one of these fucked up trips. We're fucking an hour and a half away from home. Like,
yeah.
Look, it's 11 o'clock at night right now. 12:21 a.m. is our expected time of arrival to get back home. This is the first time in the history of Random Night we got so fucking lost we actually need to use the GPS to get back. So yeah, this is a first. Like, we've gone to a lot of random ass places over the years. And even just since we started recording this shit.
In 1/2 mile, turn right.
And you probably just heard the GPS talking there. You can't see it now because of the way it's zoomed in, but the first part of our directions back are literally just turning the fuck around. I looked at the map, and it literally just makes a big circle around, and fuck it, instead of going the way it says, we're just gonna turn around the fuck here in front of whatever the fuck this place is. Just so we can chop a little bit out of this trip. So yeah, we're going back the way we came now to try and get back to where we started.
Continue on route.
Yeah. So yeah, we fucked up.
Yeah.
We're like as far away from where we thought we were gonna be as we could possibly be.
I thought we were heading towards fucking Breezewood. Nope.
Yeah. Now, we're about as far away from Breezewood as humanly possible. So yeah, we can't navigate. The secret's out. We don't know what the fuck we're doing. Of course, this is nothing new for us, but this is definitely the furthest out of our way we've ever been. So yeah, we'll be back whenever we either A, have a story to tell, or B, we're somewhere where we know where the fuck we are.
Yeah.